Here we go. It's the DC Sports Huddle, sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor. Experience a sports fans' paradise. Dave Johnson, Rob Woodfork, and George Wallace. And many people believe because training camp is back, football is back, it very much is a sports fans' paradise. Now, before we go any further and we get into the meat and potatoes, I hope folks are listening to WTOP Sports at 15 and 45, as I do, even when I'm not on. And I could have sworn I heard Rob Woodfork say he still was hoping the team was called the Washington Federals when discussing the big issue about what fight song to go with, which that still confuses me. But you're still in this Federals kick that you haven't gotten over that?
First of all, I'm never gonna get over it. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the Commander's name, but I will say this. I think that they maybe have a better season than people are giving them. So
okay.
I'll make that trade. I'll make that trade off. What?
Because of the name?
No.
Okay.
Well, also, we don't need a fight song. Why are we in 2022 doing fight songs?
Right.
It has nothing to do with 2022.
But what I'm telling you is you don't need a fight song. You don't need a fight song. You don't need a mascot. Like, look, you needed that stuff in the 60s to try and rally up. I mean, with the advent of social media and, you have beat reporters on top of beat reporters and everything else. You don't need fight songs. Get in the end zone. As a matter of fact, you're not even going to play the fight song because you don't get in the end zone.
All right. First of all, let's just calm down here for a second. Two, it's not about I think it's more, you don't need a fight song, fine, but this franchise has had that. This franchise has had the band, and they're trying to keep that link. They've changed everything else. And Jason Wright made it clear that the fans wanted the band and the fight song to stay. They're trying to hang on to something. So I don't have a problem, not that you asked me, but I'm just saying I don't have a problem with the fight song, just trying to keep it, keep something there. And it's not everybody has a fight song. So I'm okay with it. Not that you asked me, but that's my 2 cents.
No, that negates the whole point of a rebrand.
Again, Rob, we had a team in this town called the Federals, and they may have been the worst football team ever to get paid.
But here's the thing. There's nothing worse than what we've seen from this franchise in the last, arguably 20, but I'll just go ahead and say the last 4 or 5 . Just
the 2 years the Federals were in town, the USFL felt like 2 decades. Trust me.
But nobody remembers that. Like nobody remembers them being in the Super Bowl at this point.
Well, see, and that's why we should get out of the 80s and get.
Now, look. This is why I can't do the show from work because look, I'm all grumpy now. Yeah, I can't see myself in the mirror here because the lighting sucks. So yeah.
All right. Let's flip the page. George, you were out there. Ron Rivera was talking about the Carson Wentz effect, the presence, the fact of quarterback of his resume. Before we debate his resume, just pointing out he had some success. There seemed to be, Rivera was saying, a certain presence that had uplifted the morale of the team. Did you sense that?
Yeah, you can sense it. I mean, you can see. Look, I mean, it's just night and day. Just watching. Number one, you feel it. You feel his. He's taken his retention from the spring into the summer, and Ron Rivera very pleased with that. He's made an effort. He had the receivers out to California to build up chemistry. And Carson Wentz told us today, it's not just about on the field, but it's off the field stuff too. And getting to know guys, getting to learn what's, he says, guys are at different parts of their life. He says, look, I'm married, I have 2 kids, a lot of single guys out here. You learn about your teammates. And I think that is a big deal. He goes, that's how you begin to build a culture in the locker room. And look, we all know this team needs that. So if you get the Carson Wentz that, from 2017 and on the field, then it's going to be even more of a bonus. The big question mark is which Carson Wentz are you getting? He's been traded each of the last 2 off seasons. He's in his 3rd team in 3 years. So, but off the field stuff, I think is a big deal for what he has been able to bring so far in the few months that he has been here. And players have seen that. Players talk about it. And, for the first time in a long time, the quarterback 1 position on this team, okay, Ryan Fitzpatrick last year, whatever. But there's no quarterback controversy. Taylor Heineke is not going to start. Whether he plays this year or not, we don't know. But Carson Wentz, this is his team. And Ron Rivera felt it again necessary to go up to him yesterday when he got to the facility and reiterate the fact that he is wanted here. They went out to get him. They put a lot of eggs in this basket. Don't get me wrong. whether or not it was a panic move like we've discussed in the past or not, they're making it clear, at least in public, that Carson Wentz is their guy. He's the guy taking this team into the future, at least for this year. And today was off to a good start. Rivera not happy with the practice, but as far as the Carson Wentz part of it, there we go.
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't think, and I'll get both your input. I don't think Carson Wentz is a question. I think he is going to be fine as a quarterback. The big question for this team is the defense.
Yeah.
Did it start to show some improvement at some point last year? And can it continue to get back to 2020 with Chase Young a big question mark? To me, that's the whole season right there.
Yeah, and it's and you can argue there are more holes right now in the defense than in the offense, as far as especially with depth is concerned and at linebacker. So to your point, and Chase Young, who knows when we're going to see him? I was thinking first month of the season, but the way these guys were talking yesterday, I have no idea. And I have no problem with them not putting a timetable on him coming back. You don't want to do that. Just let him rehab. When he's ready to play, he'll play. But as far as depth is concerned on the defense, that would be my bigger question marks right now. And I would hope that the defense, look, last year, it read its press clippings, for lack of a better way to put it. Look, this team is supposed to be the greatest defense on paper, and they stunk, at least at the beginning of the year. They were supposed to win games for this team early on. They didn't. So I would hope that there are enough veterans and enough guys with winning mentalities on this defense, led by Jonathan Allen, that you're going to see a different defense, at least to start the season. Let's hope.
Rob, your level of confidence.
I mean, I'm not super confident, but I will say this, the Chase Young situation is one that we have not spoken a lot about, and this is a crucial season for him. As a matter of fact, I think it's not even just us. I think it's a little underreported at this point, because he has had injuries in his first two seasons. Even before he got hurt last year, there was, some question as to why he wasn't playing at the level that we would expect a number 2 overall pick to play. So, yeah, coming off of an injury and not being there for the first part of training camp and going into what is an all-important third season for him, he has to show some level of, showing us that he is the second overall pick, that he is the dominant force that everybody thought that he was going to be coming out of Ohio State. Now, Booger McFarland on ESPN had some pretty high expectations for him that I won't necessarily match. But at the same time, he's got to have a high impact season, because we are getting up on the point now where you have to make a choice as to how many of these former first round picks you're going to keep on that defensive line. We know that Daron Payne is up at the end of the year. And then after that comes Montez Sweat, who quietly has had the better career between he and Chase Young. So with Chase Young at the back end of that line, if he doesn't show anything this year, this could be, and I know it's, not apples to apples, but this could be a Brian Arakpo situation where you get to the end of his deal and you're still trying to figure out if the guy is who you thought he was when you took him in the first round. But this is a very important season for him. So we need to see a lot from him. We need to see a lot from that defensive line. And we need to see more from that defense in total. Obviously, the Carson Wentz is the top storyline going into this training camp. But I think maybe like 1B would be the Chase Young situation.
Well, that's a big 1B, and there's a level of anxiety because, George, you mentioned there's no timetable on his return, and so again, I don't want to be.
And it doesn't have to be an RG3 all in for week 1 situation either. Like if he doesn't play as a matter of fact, the first 2 games we've been talking about how easy their schedule is, at least on paper. How easy their schedule is the first 2 weeks of the season. If he misses those 2 games, I don't think that's the end of the world, but he's got to be able to hit the ground running pretty shortly thereafter.
No, that's what I'm saying. My anxiety level is just it. I think he is so critical to the success of this defense and of this team. It's a level of anxiety. I'm not predicting it's going to be a bad situation because we just don't know when he's going to be back. But we can do all the things through training camp and preseason. But until he gets back on the field, I think Commanders fans should have a queasy feeling about their situation. You mentioned the schedule. At least it on paper, it's a ramp up, and it's also puts the pressure on this team to get out of the gate strongly. What about this team in general. I mean, this was a team, albeit backed in, or however you want to describe it, the playoffs a couple of years ago. It's not just Carson Wentz. It's not just Chase Young. Do we have the team makings of a team that, if the stars align, can make the postseason? George?
Yeah, I do. I really think so. I think this team can win 10 games. I mean, the schedule, look, you have to start 2-0. There is no doubt about it. And look, I know Jacksonville and Detroit are thinking you get Washington on the schedule. They're thinking the same thing. I get it. But this team and this coaching staff, year 3, Ron has talked about it a numerous amount of times about how this year has to be the year. Year 3, you have to take that step. You have your quarterback. You have the weapons around him. You have depth on offense. There's maybe one starting position up for grabs on this team right now. That's at right guard. That's it. So you have the guys there, from the Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, John Dotson, the new guy, Curtis Samuel, Antonio Gibson, go on, and Carson Wentz. So you have to start fast, which this team has not done, and you have the playmakers to get it done. If you get Carson Wentz is the key. There's no doubt about it. We're not going to sugarcoat that. If you get the good Carson Wentz, I think this team can win 9-10 games. The schedule sets up for it, fine, for once, and you have playmakers on offense and defense as well. You hope the defense takes that next step and you get Chase Young back at some point. So I know it's way early and they're still in shorts and helmets. We haven't put any pads on yet, but yeah, on paper, this has the setup, to your point, of stars align. This could be a pretty good football team.
Yeah, and why not? What is the Dennis Green line? We know who they think
we are, who they thought they were.
We basically know this team. There's not a quarterback controversy. There's
You're
not
right.
a lot of controversy. And again, the playmakers you just listed, Carson Wentz, I believe, will be able to get it done, because a player that's been through what he's been through has not forgotten how to play, and he'll get it done. If he is protected, this offense can have some success. Rob?
I'm actually looking at the schedule right quick, because I don't think the schedule sets up for them to have a great season. Now, I don't disagree with George that they could win 10 games. I do see.
I didn't say great season, not great.
All right, but I mean, getting to 10 wins.
Oh, he was talking about Jacksonville, Detroit.
Right, yeah. But here's the thing: they have a tendency. They'll lose the games that they should win, and win the games, some of the games that they should lose. So there's going to be a couple of those in the schedule. So if they don't start 2-0, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, because Jacksonville might be one of the most improved teams just by virtue of having some decent leadership. But the thing that I think is going to trip them up is that really late bye week that doesn't come until week 14, because you do have, and I wanted to bring up the schedule because I remember there were some winnable games there on going into the bye. You have the Monday nighter at the Eagles, and then you have a short week going to the Texans. You have the Atlanta Falcons, New York Giants. The division games are always unpredictable. So that little stretch there stops me short of being very confident that they're going to have that 10-11 win season. But yeah, look, I on paper, they make a lot of sense. I think the biggest question mark for me is the offensive line, though, because there is a lot of change to that interior offensive line. Your starting center is coming off of a season-ending injury. Your backup center is coming off a season-ending injury. Even your third-string center is coming off a season-ending injury. They were, as a matter of fact, I was the next guy up if they would have had to go to another center in 2021. So you got 2 new starters at guard. It's an experienced bunch. Absolutely. Ron Rivera said, in that press conference leading up to training camp, look, we have 10 guys that we like. As a matter of fact, we have 12 guys that we like on the offensive line. So if that ends up being a strength, if they somehow, even though you lose a Brandon Sheriff and, you added the veterans, if they end up being better on the offensive line, that's going to be a huge difference, because a big part of Carson Wentz's struggles in Philadelphia, anyway, I didn't watch Indianapolis close enough to know, but a big part of his struggles in Philadelphia was he wasn't playing in front of a starting caliber offensive line. So if he's got that here, that's half the battle.
Well, and again, the offensive line is probably the most, I don't know if it's underrated, because I think we do know the importance of it. But often when people ask me to predict records for the season. I don't want to do it. And I used to say 8-8. You can't do that anymore because it's a 17-game season. But to me, it all does predicate on the offensive line. If you have key injuries on the offensive line, your season can go sideways in a hurry.
Yeah.
So that's going to be another area we're going to have to focus on.
And that's the thing. They have the potential to be really strong at the point of attack on both sides of the ball. And that's the most important thing when you're talking about a football team.
That's football.
I think
football.
that's right. Exactly. So it's like they can win in the trenches. I think the question is, do they have the right quarterback, and linebacker is another sort of underrated storyline, because they really could have, and I'm watching the veteran out of Seattle that came available, and they weren't able to make that happen. So I'm curious to see if they have an answer at linebacker, especially at that Mike position.
Like I said, the linebacker position for me is one of the biggest question marks. You got to get Jamin Davis. I mean, he's a freak of an athlete, and it was interesting talking with some of the guys today, all media guys. If you can't get Jamin Davis, look, last year he had a bad rookie year, fine, but he's an athlete. If you can't get him on the field and get him playing in a position, maybe not where he should, but find a place for him, then that's an indictment on coaching. Like, this is the guy you have to get on the field. One other thing too, guys, we got to, players are, Jonathan Allen said it best today. I'm paid to play. The extra stuff in one ear, out the other. The off the field stuff is just going to keep surrounding this team. And the one issue I had with Rivera yesterday, when he said he was talking about they expect the off the field issues and the talk and the noise and this, that, but he's always the guy who says, I got to move on and move on from it. But yesterday he was kind of harping on it a little bit, which kind of took me a little bit by surprise.
Yeah.
I have to just forget this off the field stuff. And players are saying the right thing, and it's human nature to hear it. You have to hear it. They're on social media all the time. But it's going to be interesting now to see with the Dan Snyder situation, and they're going to be fielding questions about it, and to see how that kind of affects the lead up to the season if Dan Snyder gets in front of the committee in the next couple of days. Which is,
and that's the thing. And if he's going to ignore it, then he needs to ignore it. He needs to stop bringing it up, because if I recall, well, I mean, yeah, there were a couple of pointed questions there, but he could have sort of sidestepped that instead of walking into it, basically kicking in the door and sort of doubling down on that approach. And here's the thing: you can't just turn the page as long as Snyder's still in the building. So we're going to ask those questions, and they're fair questions, because you took the money from the guy who's at the heart of everything that we're talking about. So
guy signs your check.
You weren't in the building for the stuff that they're talking about, but you're accepting a check from the guy who was.
Yeah,
so,
but in fairness to Ron Rivera, I think what he did say, and I didn't have a problem with it, he was saying that did not want to brush aside the past turmoil. He just was saying that he hoped that the football team is judged by the present. And so while I don't think he's taking a check, he's no more guilty than Jason Wright is or whatever, because they didn't experience whatever, again, allegedly happened. We have to be careful with that. So throughout this all, when I think of his tenure and you throw in a pandemic, I think the Commanders have been fortunate to have Ron Rivera in charge to guide through both the social and health issues, because I think it required somebody with the experience, with also the character. I thought also something he said struck me about that Mike Ditka told him that the one thing you have to do as a football team is give back to the community. And there's a stress on that. As much as we think of Mike Ditka as a hard-nosed football player, and he was, and demanding coach, and he was, but he also had a sense, again, he grew up in an era where the football players were very much a part of the community. They weren't making the kind of money they're making today. So not only he grew up in an era when you're giving back to the community, that's basically your community trying to make a difference. So, again, I give Ron Rivera so many leadership credits, and I do think that's a plus for this team as it tries to sort itself out and finally get on some kind of path of consistency.
And look, I'm going to ask you guys this question too, but also with Rivera, this is the first year with normalcy, like no COVID restrictions, no nothing, a real training camp, you're on the field. He said he's really excited about that. Here's my question. Going into a year 3 coach, do you have a problem with him saying it's not playoffs or bust?
You know what? I don't have a problem.
No,
because and maybe that's too soft to understanding of on my part, but I don't think if it's no playoffs this year, I don't think firing Ron Rivera then and starting all over again gains you any progress.
Right.
Because look, it might not be playoffs because of just some of the things we talked about. You get injuries to key players. If Carson Wentz doesn't make it out of the first quarter, God forbid, as I say that, it changes just like it did last year with Ryan. No, seriously though, Ryan.
Yeah.
So I think that judgment call has to depend on the circumstances.
Right, exactly. And organizationally, you can't come out and give one-loss records for what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, because the Baltimore Ravens are a golden example of that last year. I mean, basically anybody on their roster who mattered was hurt. They were starting guys, literally starting guys off the street at running back last season. So so if Washington goes through something like that, then, you end up with 7 wins. That should almost get you coach of the year.
Yeah, no, and I think also it's easy to fire everyone once things start going wrong. I think it's up to Martin Mayhew, it's up to Jason Wright, whoever, to make a judgment call that if for some reason this team doesn't make the playoffs, and there are many reasons why it might, because this is the NFL. This is on any given Sunday, Saturday, Thursday, Tuesday, whatever day of the week they're playing now.
Week to week, everything happens. You're right.
But if you get a sense that it's a downward spiral, that we're really not getting it anywhere, you fire the coach. But I can't foresee that happening. And again, for what I just mentioned, I'm not saying you get a pass, but all coaches had to deal with the last couple of years. It was a unique situation, and it was not the way you wanted to start. As they talk about programs, your program in a new city, whether you're in Washington in 2020 or any other city in 2020, but it was more magnified and troublesome in Washington for a lot of reasons in 2020 as we went through social reckoning and turbulence, that they had to deal with some issues that there's no way he could have foreseen was going to happen when he was hired in January of 2020.
Yeah, but it's all of that is out the window now. Year 3, you got the quarterback. They're talking like they won the day by getting Carson Wentz.
That's what I'm saying. You put a lot of eggs in that basket. That's what
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You've said it.
This quarterback is going to define the Ron Rivera era in Washington. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but it's really true. The first year, you were playing a guy that was inherited, and you kind of felt like you had to because he was a first-round pick. The second year was supposed to be a bridge year till you could get a guy. But he was treating this like he had operated like he wanted to basically luck into a quarterback like a Dak Prescott in the later rounds. And this year you had that opportunity with the kid in Atlanta now in Desmond Ritter and Malik Willis. Those guys were on the board in the second round. And I can't remember if they went before their third round pick, but you had the opportunity to luck into a couple of good young talents and not feel like you have to play them right away. So, but you made the desperation play. So if it works out, then fine. But if not, that's probably going to cost him his job.
All right. As we wrap up this week's DC Sports Audible at the line of scrimmage, Rob, since you were just speaking, we'll go to you. We'll start with you.
Yeah, just real briefly, because I'm about to go on air. But my thing is, I hate that this is slander the Black Pro Bowl quarterback week, from Lamar Jackson to Kyler Murray. I'm not a fan of either team, but I hope that I see a Super Bowl where guys who are at least are similarly talented get to face off in the Super Bowl, so that we can once and for all get rid of this narrative that a quarterback has to be a 6'5" white guy in order to succeed in the NFL.
George,
drop.
It's going to be interesting the next few days, see what happens with Juan Soto, whether or not he's going to be on this team or not. Lots of talk about what it's going to take to a deal to trade him. I don't know about you, Dave, but I'm just blown away at the fact that we are sitting here with this team talking about possibly trading a 23-year-old guy that they're talking about being, comparing to guys like Babe Ruth. To see where this team has gone, it just blows me away.
Well, it's a dramatic. It does remind me of and the Orioles that won the World Series in '83 did not have a Juan Soto type player, but within a couple of years, they were in a tailspin to the point where they brought Earl Weaver back out of retirement. But that's, again, I'm always bringing up ancient history. I should go dig for dinosaurs or something. But anyway, as my audible with a lot of scrimmage real quick, I'll go off track here a little. The Mystics are going to win a title this year. They're playing defense at the right time. Look for them to have a strong finish. They're the best coach team in the WNBA, and we could use a title in this town down the stretch. That's going to do it for the DC Sports Huddle, sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor to experience the sports fans' paradise. For George Wallace, I'm Dave Johnson, along with Rob Woodfork, who's busy at WTOP.